So we want to look at a little bit of this question, who is Jesus? And there are a few things I want us to look at. One, Genesis 1 compared to John 1. We'll look at, in a second video, some monotheistic text applied to Jesus, and a particular monotheistic text where Jesus Christ is Lord, capital L-O-R-D. The wider idea of Yahweh text and Jesus, other passages that point to Jesus as God, worship in Jesus, prayer in Jesus, and finally, the grand meta-narrative sweep of Scripture. So this is Genesis 1, 1 to 5, and John 1, 1 to 5. And what I want to point out about Genesis 1 is that the text claims to be 3,500 years old. It makes the claim it's within 600 years of being the oldest written thing anywhere on the planet. Genesis 1:1 is accepted by all three major monotheistic faiths, Judaism, Islam, and Christianity. And anyone who looks at Genesis 1 will admit that there's a huge grammatical problem in the text. And so I want to show you the text, I want to read it in Hebrew, and then I want to dive into what I call the riddle of Genesis 1. So this is the text from the printed text, Biblia Hebraica Stuttgartensia. This is very old. It's so old, in fact, that it's read from right to left. Many ancient languages are read from right to left, and Hebrew is. It's a beautiful language. I'll read the first 5 verses just so you can hear it read. Bereshit bara Elohim et ha-shamayim va'et ha'aretz, v'ha'aretz hayita tohu v'abohu, v'hoshek al pnei tehom, v'ruach Elohim merachefet al pnei chamayim. Vayomer Elohim yehi or, vayehi or, Vayar Elohim et haor kitov, Vayavdeel Elohim bein haor uvein hahoshek, Vayikra Elohim laor yom, Ve lahoshek kara laila, Vayihi erev, Vayihi boker, yom echad. Now, very beautiful. These little dots and things are vowels that were added later to help people like us in America when we're reading. We need to know the right thing to say. So that's what all these things mean. The square-looking things are the consonants. And anyone who works through this text is going to admit that these two words, the second word and the third word, pose pretty great grammatical difficulty in the text. And so, text means in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth. Well, the problematic words are God and created. Now, our text, as we read, Bereshit is pretty straightforward. This part of the word be means in. Reshit is related to the word rosh, which means head. So it's in the beginning. Some people read this in the beginning of God created. I think most scholars go with the former, in the beginning. Not much of a debate about this particular word. All three English words, in the beginning, go back to this one word that has two parts in Hebrew. When we come to the second word, bara, this is the word he created. And I imagine some of you have taken a foreign language before. If you're like most classes, you've maybe taken Spanish, or some have taken French, a few have taken Latin. And if you've taken any of those languages, you probably remember something like this, a verb conjugation chart. This is one in Latin. This is the word I call, voco, vacas, vacat, vacamus, vacatis, vacant. And that means I call, you call, he, she, or it calls, we call, you call, they call. In other words, most language other than English will add little bits to the word, and it will make the word say I, you, he, she, or it. And that's true in Latin. When I learned Latin, we used the word love, amo, amas, amata, mamas, amatis, amant. I love, you love, he, she, or it loves, we love, you love, they love. Same thing in German, same thing in French. You just add little bits to the word and it turns it into I do this, you do this, he, she, or it does this, we do this, you do this, they do this. Well, what's interesting about that is most languages that I know about, other than English, will do that, and Hebrew does that. So when we come to this word, we can go to a conjugation chart and know exactly what it means. And the odd thing about Hebrew, instead of having 6 that most Romance languages have, they have 10. And for some reason, they do it backwards. So this is the word kill, katal, and that means he, masculine, singular, killed, he killed, she killed, you, man, killed, you, woman, killed, I killed, they killed, they, women, killed, you all, men, plural, killed, you all, women, plural, killed, we killed. And if you come over on this one, he will kill, she will kill, you man will kill, you woman will kill, I will kill. So this is the conjugation chart in Hebrew. And the interesting thing is, when you look at this and then you look at bara, the only thing that bara could be is this one, which is third masculine singular. And so this is the word create in the beginning. And you have to translate this, he created. So the person creating isn't describing themselves as a woman, isn't describing themselves as plural. The person describing themselves as creating is describing themselves as a man, and in the singular, in the beginning, he created. And if that's all we had, there wouldn't be really much of a problem, because that's just monotheistic teaching. The problem comes when you come to this next word, Elohim, when it describes who this one is who did the creating. In Hebrew, you often put the verb before you put the subject. In English, you put the subject before the verb, but in Hebrew, you have a little special mark for the heavens and the earth to make it clear that this is the direct object of that. So this word, Elohim, is describing the he who does this creating. But there's a problem. There's a massive problem with this word. And I bet you may know what that problem is, but I'll just try to spell it out to you. So if you have a cherub, one cherub is called a cherub. And if you have more than one cherub, it's called a cherubim. If you have a seraph, it's called a seraph. If you have a bunch of seraphs, they're called seraphim, I-M. And so here's the paradigm chart. This is the word horse. And if you have one horse, it's a horse. And if you have a feminine horse, you add this to the end. And if you have 2 masculine horses, you take the word sus and you say susaim, and that means you've got 2 horses. And if you want to have 2 feminine horses, it's susathaim, 2 feminine horses. And if you have more than 2 horses, it's susim. I wish I could get this to turn red. I don't know how to do that in Microsoft Word. And if you have more than 2 female horses, it's susoth. And so you see, you add little things to the end, and it converts it from 1 or 2 to more than two. So here's our problem. The word God, and Moses uses this word twice in Deuteronomy 32, is the normal word for God, Eloah, Eloah. That's how you say the word God in Hebrew. The problem is hundreds of times in the Pentateuch, you don't have this word. You have Elohim. And that Elohim, if we just go back and look at it, this is the standard plural ending. And in fact, we could go through 10,000 words. Dog is the word fish. Dogim is a bunch of fish. Sus is a horse. Susim is a bunch of horses. 10,000 words we could go through, and you convert it to the plural by adding im. And Elohim is used often of pagan gods. Elohim acharim, other gods. You will not worship other gods. But the problem is, this sentence says, in the beginning, he, singular, created. And who is this he who created? This he who created is plural, Elohim. I mean, if we read it the way it first sounded to the Hebrews, it would say, in the beginning, he, that is God's, plural, he created the heavens and the earth. A he who is singular and at the same time plural. And that phenomenon is on every page of the Hebrew Bible. If we had time, we could look at Jewish writers who were struggling with how to do that. And even in the grammar itself, there's one text where Abraham himself uses plural verbs. The gods, they made me wander, it says in Hebrew, but it can't mean that. It has to mean he made me wander. But Abraham is using a plural verb because it's confusing, because this should be plural, and yet it's being treated as this virtual singular he. So, who is Jesus? Well, when we come to John 1:1-5, it seems pretty clear to me that John is commenting on Genesis 1:1-5, and it's clear because he begins his gospel in beginning. And if we looked at the Greek translation of that, we would see this is verbatim of how Genesis 1 appears. In the beginning, in the beginning. And then you have, was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. This one was in the beginning with God. All of those ideas seem to play with this idea of God being one and at the same time more than one. You've got a plurality within the more basic unity of God. And then John says all things came about through him, and without him not one thing came about which has come about. Well, in Hebrew, how do you say all things? You say it, the heavens and the earth. In the beginning, God created everything. Well, everything came about through this Logos together with God. And even this phrase, the light in the darkness shines and the darkness did not overwhelm it, is that not interacting with this statement, Elohim, he said, he, that is Elohim, said, let there be light. And when God said, let there be light, there was light. Who is Jesus? The God of the Bible, from the very first Hebrew page to the very last, presents himself as an I, equally, eternally, absolutely, who at the same time is also a we, an I, we, a singular who has this unexplained plurality within his being. We see that on every page, and the New Testament writers are saying Jesus is included in that plural unity on the very first page. Jesus is inside that, not outside that. All right, so we'll end here. I'm going to do a separate video on monotheistic language, and I look forward to talking to you then.